Hey guys, Luke.Ink here. So today we're going to talk about depicting water with ink. How do you do it? It's really not as challenging as you might think. So I'm going to go over some old drawings of mine where I did that, different types of bodies of water, different water effects. And then I'm going to do some demonstrations real time so that you can see what pens that I use and how I create those effects. So let's dive in. So to start, I'm going to go over this drawing. I made this a few years back. It's one of my more well-known pieces, but it's a good example because it uses a few different styles of markings to show water. The most obvious one is the kind of lazy stream that the adventurer is standing in. And as you can see, I've used very basic curved lines of varying thickness to just show that motion of the surface. And then when that water drops over this little precipice here, you can see the lines change from curved to straight as it drops down. Basically just parallel lines, again of varying thickness. And lastly, on the bottom here, we see that the water's coming into contact with a pool below, and that's resulting in these bubbles in this upspray here, which I've just used short curved lines and dots to show that. So one of my rules in depicting water is I try to keep it simple. The simpler the better in general. If you overcomplicate water, sometimes it can be a little bit too much. And in fact, if I were to draw this over again, I would probably have even fewer lines in this water just to heighten the contrast between these rocks and the water. So I would probably have the more bold lines and maybe one or two straight lines, and that's probably as far as I would go. So, but live and learn, right? Our style always changes a little bit as we go, and there's nothing wrong with the way this is. It's just that I would probably do it a little bit different now. That's part of growing as an artist. So, the other thing that I've got going on here with water is these drips. And for these drips, I used my go-to for white on black, which is the Winsor & Newton white gouache. Works really well. I just put a little bit of this in a container, add a drop or two of water to thin it out, and then just come in with a pen and just very lightly draw those few lines, maybe make a couple dots. So that's how I've got that. And actually, if we zoom in, we'll bring this up here a little bit closer, you can actually see I've even got a few little dots down here showing where a drip has landed and it's splashing up. You don't really notice it a whole lot on the overall drawing, but it's a fun little detail. So that's the first piece that I wanted to go over. And what we'll do now is I'm going to show you how to create that in real time. So now comes the fun part. I'm going to ink this little sketch that I've done, which is kind of mirroring what we went over in the previous drawing, a similar scenario of curved surface of the water here, lazy stream, and then falling over a little short drop and then into another pool below. So as you can see, I've sketched it out here. I made two roughly parallel lines here, and that is just to get the level of the pool and the level of the edge where the water is starting to drop. So these are just guidelines for the eye. They aren't going to be inked at all. And then these other lines that I've made are just also loose guidelines. I might not follow them exactly. So just a way to kind of keep my focus. So I'm going to start off with a Hunt 513 bull nib. And this is just Bristol paper here. And I'm going to start by defining the edges of the water. And that's the thing about drawing water, is it's largely defined by what's around it. So you're kind of you're kind of building a container for the water. Notice I have these lines here where the water's dropping. I have it kind of spreading out as it drops. And that's kind of what water does. It tends to come out. You'll see when you pour water out of a vessel too, it starts out as a narrow stream and it generally gets a little wider at the base. So that's what I'm doing here as well. And as it gets lower, you've got all this kind of splashback coming up. So I'm going to draw that. Just dots and curved lines, nothing too crazy there. I'm also going to draw just a little bit of this flat surface of the pool here. It's not going to be perfectly flat because there will be ripples, but just to establish that that plane, I'm just going to ink that. And now I'm going to kind of put this on fast forward, and you'll see me ink these rocks, and then I'll slow it down and we'll get back to the water itself. But for now, I'm just going to speed it up because it's a little tedious, but I want to show how you can kind of define these borders of the water by inking in these rocks here. So we've got a lot of these rocks inked, and I'm going to continue with some of the rocks along the shore here in the upper part of the drawing. And it's not going to be quite as tedious as the other parts. I'm going to draw a tree here, like a tree root coming down into the water. Just to add a little bit of interest, and it will help me illustrate a point. Okay. So everything is meeting the water, so I want to have either a straight or a faintly curved line right here where the roots go into the water, and anything that goes into the water is going to have that cutoff point, of course. And this is just another kind of a rock up here. There, just very quick to establish the border of the water here. So now we can go into the water itself. Now that we've kind of contained it with the shoreline and the border, we can do the interesting part. So now we can get on to the part of the water itself. And we're going to start by doing the curved line up here for the lazy stream here. Just a nice curved zigzaggy line. And I'm going to have these two lines kind of meet up back there. And then I'm going to come in and thicken parts of the line. Because this is really, these lines are just showing kind of reflections and where the light is catching a reflection. So it's going to be varying widths, varying thicknesses. It's very much a organic line. So very simple, not much to it. And now I'm going to do a little bit of the same thing here on the bottom as well, just very faint. Kind of showing that surface just a little bit. And we're also going to do a little bit of reflection work here. Going to reflect these roots just like that, kind of a broken line. See how that adds a lot of dimension and interest. We can do the same thing here. Draw a line showing the water curving around the shoreline. And we can also do a little bit of reflection work here as well. Just subtly suggest it with a few thick lines. Just giving the impression of a reflection. It doesn't have to be exact, just very slight. So now for this little waterfall area, we're going to do just our little very inconsistent vertical lines. We're starting, again, we're using that faint pencil line, that parallel line from the beginning. We're kind of using that as a guide, just as that's where we stop these curving lines more or less. This is where we're going to start our vertical lines. Again, it's catching the light, so it can be inconsistent. There can be areas where it's a little darker. It doesn't take much. You can see all of a sudden it just has a depth and a dimension to it. And lastly, down here, I'm going to just do some dot work. Water is striking the pool, so it's sending up this little mist. And we can put a few, maybe put a few bubbles in here on the surface. Just like that. And again, doesn't have to be uniform. It can be little darker patches, lighter patches, sort of whatever you want to make it. But there you go. So we've basically kind of recreated what was in that drawing, and you can use different variations on these ideas in creating water in various circumstances. But that's kind of a basic rundown of how you approach drawing a stream like this. So I'm going to do other videos that break down other ways of depicting water, such as waves and reflections and ice and different things like that. So if you like this video, first of all, thanks for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate the support. But if you like this video and you want to see some other videos talking about other aspects of drawing water, as well as a ton of other topics, go check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description box below. and I hope to see you guys over there. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.